Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan, and this video is titled Resolution in parentheses Modulation. This is a series, and this video is part 3. If you haven't listened to part 1 and 2, I suggest you pause this video and listen to those 2 videos, then come back and join me. This is a series on irresoluted resolutions. We're taking a look at the resolutions that we call New Year's resolutions that seem to lack completion. Those resolutions that eventually forms a routine pattern of irresoluted resolutions. And I mean, they lack the firmness of purpose, the inability to proceed, and the uncertainty on how to complete these resolutions, how to extend it beyond the brain and the heart dialogue and the emotional heart messages to the brain, and vice versa. We're left with those pre-wired logic conclusions that are historically outdated, and they get woven into the fiber of our brains and heart, and it becomes a sensation, emotional sensation, instead of a practical resolution. The resolution fluctuate from the heart to the brain. I think, I feel, I think, while lacking this missing component, that piece of coherent communication of intent. I mentioned in the other videos that while the brain and heart generates a dialogue, it lacks an analog strength to execute in longevity, in a longevity manner. Besides the emotions, an individual can ask themselves, what are the practicalities to the resolution? And that's a personal question, and it has to be a personal answer. And a song came to mind, and I mentioned it in part 2. I believe I could fly. I believe I could touch the sky. One line. And then there's another line. If I can see it, then I can do it. If I just believe it. And so these are sentiments, nice sentiments. But we have found out that resolutions requires more. I could create the image of flying in my mind, extend my arms, and I could believe it, but gravity refutes the claim. Just like with the resolution, my emotion could get involved, right? From the brain to the heart to the brain. However, where's the belief? Does the belief ties in to what my emotions, the messages that my emotion is sending my way? And I literally use the word sending because we could be inundated with emotions from the brain to the heart. And while it leads up and into the New Year's, many times that excitement tapers off. And I mentioned sending our resolution to a new year. That leads to a wistful year ending. And wistful, the definition is regretful, having or showing a feeling of regret, a longing. But we're learning in this series that we don't send resolutions, we cultivate a plan of executing with executing with particularities. And we're going to take a look at the psyche in this video because the psyche is not fictitious. It doesn't go off of artificial emotions, those supplementary emotions that feel like the real deal, but it's just based on the dialogue between the brain and the heart. The I believe I could fly concept, but not necessarily leaving the location an individual is in. So the psyche, it doesn't believe like the brain and the heart, emotional correspondence. The psyche believe call that fake news because the psyche is genuine. And our psyche determinations of the uneventful resolution is noted and posts. So, and it becomes a belief. And with no variable proof, we cannot get the belief to go beyond proof. And what I love about the psyche and belief, it's willing to work with an individual. It just needs some tangibles. Without that, the psyche is forced to exhibit a based sequence. And as the years go by, the waves keeps going off of the feed. The last belief, that's what the psyche goes off of. That's the wave that it rides up and down. It can't go beyond any further. The psyche it's generates, the belief is generated from the last alteration that modified our conscience. So when I used to run on a consistent basis, I went from running 3 miles, and so that's where my belief system had gotten variable proof that I could run. And then when I ran 7 miles, there was an actual alteration in my psyche, in the belief system, like, yeah, she could add 4 more miles onto that last memory, that last belief system, and it goes on from there. That's what I mean from modifying the conscience, because the psyche is conscientious of belief. So while the emotions from the brain and the heart is having a frenzy, excitement, I am going to, and I talked about that in, I think it was part 1. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, find my soulmate. I'm going to. The psyche, the belief, on the other hand, is saying, I don't believe that. And these beliefs are under consciousness. People usually call it unconscious, but I called it under consciousness. And that's because it's in operation as well as what we consciously believe. Because our conscious belief and unconscious belief could be operating on from two different networks. So resolutions become a strain. We try to gain aptitude based on our emotions, but we are left with inabilities. So finding, oneself being incapacitated by feelings and emotions and debilitated by belief. That's a conundrum within itself. And because our psyche is visceral, and I did a video on um, visceral, like the sun, it's all energy, but it's more mathematical than mechanical, more formulated than feeling, more sensational than sensible. And so with our emotions are all will get generated from, oh, I have a bright idea, and that bright idea goes from the brain to the heart, from the heart to the brain. And at times, too often, when that concept is labeled resolution, a bright idea, without a plan, it usually dwindles away. We have these two channels that have to cooperate at full capacity in the same space with diverse networking. So the question is, how do we get both on board? And does each one have the sustainable motivation that is necessary to complete the task? We have the emotions, but do we have the knowledge, the engineering, and how to modulate what we seek to achieve? Because each category requires a modicum of understanding. And sending our resolution into another year, these are the particulars that is either not known, that are forgotten, or simply overlooked. The reason I wanted to spell out all the contributing factors, each one adds or subtract from the cause. And what is the cause? We have to be conscientious of each participant within ourselves, especially which parts of our being is not on board, or better yet, I should say, unable to get on and across the boards and the barriers that, we ourselves are not even familiar with. Because again, they're underconscious. We're not failures by no means. These are patterns. And what I love about Scent of Beauty is that we get to look in our own belief system and just examine it. That's a gift to self. Without some acknowledgement of our own internal system, doing some introspect and its engineering, it is difficult to advance. Our entire human existence is the most complex system that I know of. It is so beautiful. And the collective and individual method of operation is not examined, and that's because a lot of the time the shallow base that we stop at is the brain and the heart banter. But many times we are taught to target particular areas or not to. It's like someone getting the task, right, of setting the silverware for a 4-course formal meal with plastic forks and a teaspoon. Uh, those are the only utensils that they know. They're not wrong as far as utensils. You need that to eat. However, the key component is formal meal and four course. So not knowing what that entails, they bring what they regularly would bring to eat with. They're not familiar with self-aware. And I learned through simplicity, and that's a simple example, but knowing is an essential component. When we show up with a resolution without all our essential self, our totality, it's difficult to move on. The lack of understanding and comprehension of system engineering, and again, all it entails, it takes a tremendous amount of time to figure out the pieces don't fit, and we have to keep on doing it over and over. Hence, year after year, the same resolutions. This is it's a simple, it's simple, but the message, again, it's not missed in the simplicity. The premise of solution usually supersede the problem is what we have learned, right? Each one, the problem and the solution, it does have its weight in gold, and we want to bypass problems, but that's disregarding the gift of rudimentary, the basic, the not knowing the details, the first principle, the very early stage. Those are essentials. So the instant gratification of emotions, it takes away the gift in rudimentaries. There are answers here and in the problems, and the answers in the problems is just as important as in the solutions. There are even idioms that support the last statement that I made. As far as problems, we will cross that bridge when we get there. Don't look for trouble, quote unquote, problems. Avoid problems at all costs, right? Because they're deemed trouble. These are proudly upheld in spoken beliefs. And so this is the end of part 3. Just for us to examine and take a look at our emotions and our belief system, those two networks. And in the next video, we're going to talk about system engineering, because again, there is the answers that we need in the problems and in the solutions. Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. Thank you for listening.